Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to my senior capstone proposal for 3D over 2D video games, Rethinking the Player Experience. So, before getting started, here's something you should know a little bit about me. My name is Justin Green. I am 22 years old as of 2026. I am a transfer student from Lieber Community College with an associate's degree in digital media since April of 2024. I am also a graduate from Mililani High School since May of 2022. My program of study here in West Oahu is creative media, and my concentration is video game design and development. So, in this capstone proposal, I'll be going over four concepts. The first will be my plans regarding my senior capstone project. The second will be my argument and how 3D video games can help enhance player experience and behavior. The third is my objective and rationale for this research being conducted. And lastly, the significance of this senior project for how it is meant to be a foundation for easy 3D video game development. So, in the past decades, the video game industry strived to make games almost realistic and complex to get players excited. However, technology back then was limited and restricted to a two-dimensional format with pictures and sprites as its main asset in creating a video game. Luckily, many talented engineers and programmers have pushed the technical boundary of 2D to introduce third-dimensional shapes on a screen. Unfortunately, this then creates a question from new game developers of which format is effective in creating complex player experiences. Thus, my research has proposed that through gameplay and immersive environments, 3D video games help enhance the player experience and shape player behavior in ways that 2D video games cannot replicate. This leads to objective for this research. It was to identify the significance 3D video games have in comparison to 2D games, understand the advantages and disadvantages that 3D games can provide in terms of player experience and development efficiency. Observe how 3D games can impact the player's psychology and behavioral patterns in a positive way, and explore the opportunities 3D games can give to game developers who are entering into the industry. Therefore, my senior capstone plan is to create an immersive 3D video game using Unity. This is to demonstrate how 3D games are easy for beginning developers in creating new games and effective player experiences, which means that my project consists of developing a 3D game with my current knowledge and creative skills in constructing 3D environments and techniques. I will also make a game design document with my 3D game to serve as a blueprint for my senior project. Afterwards, I will make a survey for player feedback regarding how effective the 3D game was in bringing immersion and influencing player behavior reflexes. So now we move on to the significance. So the first significance of this project is to have a format for video game creators that can meet both player and game developer expectations. Possible implications in the future would suggest that the project would create a framework for future game designers to use 3D in creative ways. This is not limited to 3D, however, as it is possible to incorporate this framework into 2.5D games as well. The second significance of this project is that it builds a foundation for game developers looking to create a 3D video game with less money. Future implications could show that it would resolve the misconception of how expensive 3D video game development can be. Thus, more developers can understand and learn how to use immersion effectively in 3D. So here is a graph consisting of the most notable video games made for the arcade being published from 1970 all the way to the current year with the 2D and 3D format. So like you see here, you could have Space Invaders, Pac-Man, and popular ones like Street Fighter, and then some little mentionable 3D games back then that were just in its infancy until it was gradually going up to around 1990. So for 3D arcade games, they have become more popular in the early 1990s with the introduction of polygonal shapes on screen. However, In the mid 1990s, it marked the year for arcade games to be ported into consoles at home, which means that this changed the arcade market to making more physical games such as the crane game, the basketball game, and more. Alternatively, arcade games have pushed to be more complex in 3D with controls and mechanisms to make the game complex that makes it more difficult to copy for home consoles. And then next is the more notable video games on the gaming console. Now, it has come to my attention that there are more than 10,000 gaming titles on consoles, given that there are more iterations and copies of the same game. Therefore, the graph would mostly highlight certain video games that created new ways to make gaming more fun and complex to players. So, on this graph, 3D has grown exponentially due to the introduction of the first PlayStation in 1995 and how it would revolutionize 3D technology for video games and even cinema. The graph stops at around 2000 and to the current due to mobile gaming market growing with Apple phones and game creating software being accessible to the public online. This is not limited to the mobile gaming market, however, as the opportunity was expanded to the Nintendo Wii, the Nintendo GameCube, and the PlayStation 2, which offered even more 3D games than before. So, my project, my target audience for the senior project are for younger to older ages, 10 or up, who love to play video games as well as wanting to experience 3D immersion. However, this project is not limited to only video game players as the opportunity is open to anyone. Now, what is the intellectual significance to members of my discipline and community with this project, and how does this solve the problem with 3D game development? Well, by demonstrating how popular and easy 3D video games gives players immersion and challenges reflecting real life, developers can find ways to create successful video games in 3D. This further teaches beginning developers of using immersion for 3D games and minimize stress for money, as this is accomplished by looking into creative methods for 3D games. So here is the preparation and process for my project. We will start for the beginning, which is the pre-production. I plan to design and plan out assets to be used, such as 3D environments, models, textures, and more, while also working to write on my game design document. In the production phase, I plan to use third-party software for textures, models, and sounds to be integrated into Unity 3D. And for the post-production process, I plan to conduct a survey for player feedback and player reaction after playing the completed 3D video game through itch.io, as well as complete the game design document as my blueprint for the 3D project. And now we move on to my deliverable. So for my first deliverable, I will take what I've learned from creating a 3D video game for the first time, but instead, I plan to change and improve upon how I use 3D for environments and immersion instead. Certain aspects of the new 3D game would include an end goal to navigate through the game's natural environment, a split path system which leads players to new high quality scenes, utilizing 3D sounds to strengthen navigation skills and immersion, and make sure that the game is downloadable for free through itch.io. The second one for my deliverable will be a game design document for my senior project to show the game's purpose and overall blueprint. So there will be a list of concepts for the 3D game that has and what the player can interact, a list of licensees for the third-party software used to make the 3D game possible. This would probably include free assets as well as credits to the original asset provider, as well as the game design document providing a blueprint for what will be included in the 3D game. And last but not least, my third deliverable is a survey that is meant to serve as feedback from players who play the 3D game. Questions would consist of how the game is effective in bringing immersion to the player experience, how long it took the game to the player to get to the end goal, what sites they'll find fascinating, and overall suggestions of improvements to make the 3D game more effective. Mahalo so much for watching, and I am welcome to take any more questions at this time.